Hey there, everyone. Coming at you with this week's market wrap and stocks to watch list for next week. I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. Let's take a look at the economic calendar for next week, see what we've got coming up. That could impact the markets. We've got Empire State Manufacturing and Housing Market Index on Monday. Housing starts on Tuesday morning. Red Book Industrial Production, e-commerce retail sales. Let's see what else we've got going on here. We've got mortgage applications and petroleum status report on Wednesday, jobless claims, Philly Fed business outlook survey, consumer comfort index, and let's see what else we've got. We also have one Fed speak on Friday and Baker Hughes count. Look, not a tremendous amount of economic data to impact the markets next week. We did have North Korea apparently that launched another missile off of their coast this weekend, so that could be a little interesting. We got this whole Comey thing going on, the Trump thing, all kinds of Trump stuff. Who knows how the market is going to react next week? All we can do is play the market what the market gives us, right? And so let's take a look at earnings that are coming out next week. So, if you haven't followed me or you don't know what I'm all about over at alphawolftrading.com, this is the type of thing I go through every morning, do pre-market preps to get prepared for the day ahead, and then on the weekends do a pretty comprehensive list of stocks to watch for the upcoming week. Now we've got earnings seasons, which is starting to tail off a bit, but we still have some big names that are going to be reporting. And if you look at this group of stocks that are coming up to report, the ones that have the black boxes around them, I'm interested in looking at what they do for their earnings, not so much for a trade. Maybe I'm interested in how they may impact the sector. Maybe I'm interested in, thinking that maybe if they have a good earnings report or they have a poor earnings report, that may impact the stock and put it in a situation that I might be interested to start following it for a trade. And then the ones with the green boxes are the ones that actually have decent setups and could potentially set up for a day trade opportunity or a swing trade opportunity depending on the results of their earnings. So got several that I am paying attention to. They haven't all made it to the list of stocks to watch. I'll see what BDSI, SORL, and just Galectin do on Monday morning, see if that presents some kind of a day trade opportunity. And then after the close, I've got Edit and Vox and ViewRay. That could be interesting. Fate has a fairly decent looking setup on the daily time frame that I'll be interested in checking out after they do their earnings. Home Depot, interested in how it does for the sector, for that whole space. Stratasys, Cena, Entramedics, right? I think Entramedics has kind of got an interesting looking potential setup there. Cisco, Walmart, Alibaba, Applied Materials, which has been a beast. Of course, CRM, Salesforce, those are some that I am very interested in. And Just Energy, QE is another one that I think has a pretty decent looking setup on the daily time frame. And Safe Bulkers, which I think I actually have in my list of stocks to watch this week. But earnings starting to taper down a little bit, but still some very interesting names out there that I want to keep an eye on. So let me get down to the markets themselves. Take a look at the week that we just finished out, and hold on a second here. There we go. Just getting it back. So NASDAQ, very constructive chart this week, right? I mean, we're still in consolidation mode. We are overbought. We've had a nice run. We do have a gap on the daily to potentially fill, but this sector has been incredibly strong. right? This sector, the Nasdaq, techs have been very strong, and this is really just consolidating. Now, I was pretty darn bullish last week, and I really am still bullish now. I just don't see a whole lot out there that changes the bullish stance. We haven't broken down on significant volume. We just continue to consolidate and build a base that potentially we look to break out from. So still looks positive for the Nasdaq and the tech space. You know, I'm going to bring up CIBR, and this is the cybersecurity ETF, and there's cyber and there's hack. You know, these two could get some, and they look very similar, potential flat top breakouts. They could get some action because of this, you know, being held hostage ransomware that's going around. So it's a sector that could be worth paying attention to. I will say this: cyber disappointed, right? They gapped down off of disappointing earnings and guidance. FireEye actually was holding up kind of interesting. I didn't put that on this week's list. Full disclosure, I do own this. This is in my long-term hold account, just a small position. I look at them as a potential acquisition target. It has broken over a trend line. It's got a gap on the daily to fill, but it's consolidating, and potentially, if it takes out the $15 holla with some conviction, you could get a nice little pop in FireEye. So I think it's worth keeping an eye on that sector. Hack and cyber are a couple of ways that you could play it if they start to heat up. FireEye, Palo Alto Networks, what is it? Fortinet, FTNT, I think, is another one in the space, which isn't too bad. And there are quite a few names in that space to keep an eye on. So, if we start seeing some companies here in the States that get impacted by this ransomware, maybe this sector heats up. So definitely worth keeping an eye on those two. All right, let's take a look at financials, see how they fared this week. A little bit of weakness, right? We're pulling back just a tad. Looks as though we are, the 100 EMA, testing that as potential support. Have not been able to break through this trend line or reclaim the 50-day simple moving average, so we're seeing a little bit of weakness there. FAZ, if we continue to see weakness in the financials, FAZ could be something you would play to the long side. It is the bear ETF. All right, let's take a look at gold, which had a little bit of bounce. And last week, if you watched last week's video, talk about gold and silver potentially getting a bounce, and some names within the silver space. PAAS was on the list of stocks to watch last week. Had a nice little pop. AG, or was it AG? AG was another one that had on the list for a potential bounce spot, double bottom, potential test there. It had a nice little pop last week. GPL is one that really didn't, it did kind of it didn't participate as much as some of the other silver names. This could be one that participates, all right? Does a little follow-up, a little lag follow-up, but did get a little bounce, broke over this trend line on Friday. See if it gets any potential continuation or follow-through. GDXJ, GDX had a little bounce. JNUG, Nugget, same thing. Keep an eye on the precious metals. See if we get any follow through. One of the things that which was kind of interesting last week, and let me just take a look here real quick. It's the strength of the dollar. So actually, typically you get the strong dollar, you don't see strong metals, right? You see a pullback in gold and silver, and actually we had dollar going up, we had gold going up, right? Dollar pulled back on Friday, back to the 200-day, see if it can hold the support, or if we continue to move lower in the dollar, and if we do, then that likely will be good for gold and the miners. So we're still keeping an eye on gold and the miners. Not my favorite space, but worth keeping an eye on it. Biotech is consolidating, right? It did manage to break below the 50-day simple moving average. It came down and tested the 100-day and bounced. We tested some price support in the 290 area, bounced off of there. You know, could we come down and test the 200-day, test this 285 area as potential price support and the 200-day? That could happen. Having a really difficult time, the IBB is getting through the 300 mark. That has been continuing to act as resistance, but you know, it has not broken down in a significant way. It still looks very constructive. So, and you know, on this week we do have some small biotech names that are going to be reporting. You know, maybe some of them give us some positive action in the sector. We'll see what happens coming up next week. IWM, speaking of small caps, we've closed the gap on the daily. We've held the 50-day simple moving average, but we keep testing it, right? And if we break below the 50-day, we're likely going to come down and at least test this 135 area where we've got the 100 EMA. We break below there, you know, likely going to come down and test this area of price support right around 130. 133 is where I get nervous. If we break below 133, take out 132.50, then I think we're coming down to test the 200-day moving average somewhere around 130, and that would be, you know, that would be a little bit concerning if we were to pull all the way back there. But something to keep an eye on. We are, you know, like I said, we closed this gap. Would like to see it bounce from here and reclaim that, you know, take out this trend line, go back up into that 141 area and see if we can take that out. Let's see. Transportation, you know, filled its gap, and actually we broke below price support, right? We had a little bit of price support going on right around 163. We broke below that. We closed below it. We'll see if we're going to come down and maybe retest this 150, let's call it 160 area, right? See if we come down and this acts as support. We get a bounce. But right now, transportation in a short-term little downtrend. Need to take out the 50-day and that short-term trend line to get positive on the space again. Let's take a look at LABD. If the IBB rolls over, this could be an opportunity to take it long. But actually look like we're pulling back, but this could act as support right here, so we'll see. But worth keeping an eye on LABD for a potential trade if the IBB does show some weakness. S&P 500 pulled back in a slight downtrend here, but still really in consolidation mode. No big warning flag off of the S&P 500 right now. SMH, it's a beast. This thing is a beast. NVIDIA was a beast. NVIDIA, you know, probably, I mean, if NVIDIA were to pull back, I wouldn't be shocked. It had an unbelievable move in a very short period of time, making all-time highs, completely out of the upper Bollinger Band. You know, do I think it has to be a significant drop? It doesn't. I mean, we could consolidate and work our way back into the Bollinger Band, right? And just drift lower a little bit here. Could we fill the gap? Sure, that could happen. Could we come down and test previous area of price resistance, 120, see if that acts as support, maybe all the way back down to a 110. We do have a gap to fill there, but does it have to happen all at once? Not necessarily. We could just consolidate. We're at all-time highs with this thing, I believe. Let me make sure. All-time highs with NVIDIA, and could just consolidate, work its way back in, drift down, test 120. Maybe that's support. Maybe it does come down, test 111. We'll see. But you know, SMH, semiconductors, unbelievably strong sector. and it still looks good. I mean, the sector still looks good. MU, just read an article on MU that NAND and NAND is going to continue to increase in price. MU has been flirting with this $29 area, $29, $30 area for a long time. This is more of a swing or long-term hold type play, but it's a very interesting spot. You know, maybe on a pullback, it already closed this gap, but maybe on a pullback to the 50-day, this gets interesting for a long-term hold or a swing. These are just, I'm throwing these in as we're going through these sectors. So, all right, let's take a look at USO. And, you know, I've got a couple of stocks in this space. Pro members, you know which ones they are, that I'm probably going to look to, I might look to get out of. Now, I watched Carter Worth on Fast Money talking about oil, and you know, I was thinking we would get a nice little snapback play in oil and some of the oil names that I have. We got it. We got a little bit of a snapback play, but it's very weak. Now, we've got OPEC coming up at the end of the month. Maybe that's a catalyst that gives us a bounce. I just don't know if we're going to get a whole tremendous amount of follow through off of the OPEC meeting. And so I'm actually considering letting go of the couple of oil names that I have and wait for a better entry opportunity. We'll see. But oil is not all that impressive. The bounce back, it's coming up into resistance. 10 was acting as support for a while. That was a big number. Now we're right back up into 10. We'll see if this continues to act as resistance and we drop back down, or if we could take 10 out and then maybe take out the 50-day moving average. But oil just isn't looking all that great, right? We already talked about the dollar. USLV, I think, is worth keeping an eye on. Looks like you got some accumulation going on there. It was down a bunch of days in a row. Carter Worth had this on there last week. Look for USLV. If you're not looking to play an individual silver name, maybe you look to play this ETF, 3-time levered long ETF on USLV. Aerospace and defense pulled back a little bit, and I am happy about that. I would like it to pull back even more. Close the gap. I would like it to come down and test that 100-day and take KTOS, KTOS with it, so that I can put KTOS into my long-term hold account. But other than that, I mean, it is trying to hold on to the 50, well, actually it closed below the 50 EMA. So maybe we come down and we test this 100 EMA. Of course, with the stuff going on in North Korea, who knows, maybe we get a spike in aerospace defense next week. I think Boeing had a little bit to do with that too. When they had a flight, they had they had a negative announcement last week. I think that might have impacted that space. All right, so let's take a look at home builders. Home builders are pulling back just a tad. You know, could we come down and test this 50-day moving average? I think that we probably will. Is that a really terrible thing for home builders? I don't think so. Coming up in the spring selling season, I think that's the best time of the year. So I still like home builders. Let's talk about volatility real quick. I kind of blew past that. There isn't any. There's just not any fear in the marketplace. Even when the market's pulling back a little bit, there's just not a lot of fear out there. So until we see some real fear in the marketplace, this is going to be a tough trade, right? UVXY, TVIX, it's going to be a tough trade. All right, we talked about financials already. Those are big, thick stocks anyway. Financials, so more swing or long-term hold type positions in financials. It's materials, you know, so Home Depot reporting this week will be, and they're kind of in that building material space. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. but materials, filled the gap, and sitting right on top of the 50-day simple moving average. Still looks constructive. We'll see what happens next week with the building materials, but I still like the space. XLE. So this is the chart that Carter Worth actually was looking at, and pretty much just said, look, it's in a downward channel, and it is. It certainly is in a downward channel, and it's at an area of potential price support. If it loses that support, I think it gets problematic for the energy space. So not exactly my favorite space. I was hoping that we were going to get a big snapback bounce in there. It really hasn't developed. Maybe we're waiting, like I said, maybe we're waiting on that OPEC meeting. Industrials, right? Really still has to fill the gap here on the daily. And I think we got John Deere reporting on Friday. We've got some, I think maybe some other industrial names reporting next week. But I wouldn't be shocked if we were to pull back to the 50-day simple moving average, close the gap, see if that holds as support after the big pop. XLU, this has been building an unbelievable base. Right on top of the 50-day simple move, 50 EMA. Now took out the 50 SMA. Utilities are really holding up extremely well, and worth keeping an eye on that space. Healthcare, all right, we're still messing with this little short-term trend line. Are managing to hold above the 50-day simple moving average. I still think healthcare is an interesting spot. Maybe we got a little saucer with a handle going here right now. We'll see if we can take that out. We need to get through 70, let's call it $77 with some conviction. Consumer discretionary, almost looks like we got a little double top here. We'll see. So that's a little bit concerning, but I mean, it's still above the 50-day moving average. We come down here, we test 88 as support, see if that holds support. Maybe that's a good place to bounce from. Metals and mining, consolidating, not crazy about the look. I mean, it's still in a downtrend. Oil and exploration. So if I don't like the XLE, I don't like, oil and exploration, probably not super crazy about that. Either. XRT, ugly, man. I mean, ugly numbers last week out of some big retailers. Not a good looking space right now. My least favorite space all the time. I don't like playing retail at all. But, broke and closed below the 50-day moving average. I would expect that we'll likely see some continued weakness in that space. All right, so, look, we do this every week at Alpha Wolf Trading because it's important to understand what the individual sectors are doing. If you're just jumping into a stock and, hoping for a breakout, but you look at the sector and it's breaking down, you're battling the sector, you're battling the space. So you've got to be aware of what's going on out there in the sectors, right? You want to be in stocks that are in a sector that's moving higher. Or, if you're going long, you want to be in a sector that's got a good looking uptrend, right? Dominant uptrend. You don't want to be jumping into a sector that's in a dominant downtrend trying to go long. So that is why we go through this stuff, and that is what we teach at Alpha Wolf Trading. So, all right, let's go ahead and get into the stocks to watch for next week. And the first one is this NK. So it's a little biotech stock, popped on Friday. I think this is because of the association with SGMO, possibly. Same field, right? And SGMO just did a partnership, had a huge run on Friday. Now, Thursday and Friday. I will say this is a small float, 30 million shares in the float, 11% short interest. Nice pop up to the $4 holla, right into this long-term trend line. Right now, it did manage to take out the 50-day simple moving average. Maybe you get a red to green move. I wouldn't chase this thing. Look for an intraday setup. Look, pulls back to $3.60 to 50 EMA, right? Maybe that's an area to bounce. Maybe it flags out here. We'll see. There could be a trade opportunity because of the fact that it's 30 million shares in the float, 10% short interest. I would be looking at it as a day trade only with a nice intraday setup. GSAT, another one that had a big move on Friday. Now there was, a company similar to them that was bought out for a significant premium from, I can't remember who, maybe it was AT&T or Verizon, one of them. This company has some bandwidth. They just got approved for bandwidth for their satellite. This is not a cheap stock. It's not a cheap company. And it has a lot of shares in the float. 464 million shares in the float. There's a tremendous amount of call activity, option activity in this on Friday. Had a big pop on huge volume on the fact that they are potentially have hired someone to look to sell themselves. So I don't know that that was ever confirmed, but big pop, took out an area of key resistance over $2. It's over the 50-day moving average. It's over the 200-day moving average. Thick stock. Do not chase it. Look for an intraday setup. Maybe it pulls back to 2, find support, you get a pop. Could be an intraday day trade if we have some real liquidity like we did on Friday, right? Could get some more follow through. Look for a red to green move on GSAT. Day trade or on a pullback to 2, maybe a swing, right? On the chance that maybe they do get acquired by somebody. DRRX, full disclosure, I own it. This was a trade plan that I sent out a few days ago. I bought it at $1, or real close to $1, $1.02 or something to that effect. My first target is $1.25. Second target is $1.50. Actually, I'm kind of realigning this. Looking at maybe the second target being $1.46, and then maybe hold some lottos to see if we can get a pop up to $1.60 or even up to $1.75. Could even go all the way up to $2. Get a $2 holla out of this sucker. Just broke over this trend line. Okay, I really need him to quiet down. All right, so it's a little sketchy, right? But they had good PR last week, good volume. Tried to take out the 200-day on Friday. Didn't get a lot of follow through. There are some price resistances in this area. H.C. Wainwright just put a $3 price target on this. Okay, H.C. Wainwright put a $3 price target on this stock. So, I'm not looking for it to hit the $3, but $2 I think is possible. So I did not scale at $1.25, even though that was my first target, because it had some pretty decent volume, and I think that potentially if it can take out this 200-day, if we can take out that 200-day moving average, I think $1.46 is very doable, and that will be my first target to scale. And after $1.46, be looking for $1.60, $1.75 to scale out a bit more, and then maybe just hold a few lottos just to let them run and see if we do get that $2 holla. CBLI, pretty nice looking setup on the daily time frame. Had a big old pop, got out of the upper Bollinger Band, pulling back to an area of support, holding above the 50-day moving average. Got a little bit of, not much, but a little bit of action on Friday. Looking for it to take out the trend line, take out the $4 holla. Maybe we get back up and test in that 490 area. Could be waiting on news. Make sure you check to see if any of these have earnings coming up. I did not check to see if all these have earnings, but this is one that's got an interesting looking setup, looking for a trend line break. If it could take out the trend line, I think you take out the $4 holla. And it's only got 4.4 million shares in the float, 16% short interest. So you want to see some liquidity, you want to see some volume before you go getting involved in this thing. But it could be worth watching for a day trade setup with some volume. NVAX. So 200,000 shares bought by an insider at 93 cents. Another insider bought 75,000 shares at 84 cents. So good amount of insider buys going on. That's something that we focus on at alphawolftrading.com. Teach you the tools, the things that I use to find insider buys. And, there's, when you see significant insider buying, they're only doing that for one reason, and they think it's undervalued. Now, it is flirting with the $1 holla. I don't know when these guys report. It's ugly daily chart. It is ugly. Flirting with the $50 or 50 EMA, 50 SMA. I'm not necessarily thinking, I could take it for a scalp on a break over a buck, because a lot of times when a stock breaks over a buck, that's a pretty powerful break. But this is up a couple days in a row already. Could take a quick scalp, maybe on a red to green break over with some real volume. That could happen, or maybe you could look for it to pull back down to this, do a double bottom test back to 75 cents or so. I don't know, and see if it bounces there. So potential day trade opportunity on a break over one with conviction. ATHX. I'm not sure if these guys report or not, but it had a little pop on Friday with some. It's liquid, 654,000 shares traded hands. Take out 155. Going to have some resistance probably at 163 or so at the 200-day moving average. If it can take that out, I think maybe you get a 2 test again, right, up into this $2 area, or get close to there. So maybe a day trade. Biotech, you can. I'm not going to say you can't swing biotechs. You got to make sure that there's nothing binary on the on the horizon for a biotech stock, but primarily just looking for a continuation, maybe a scalp trade. Day trade, CPRX, another specialty generic drug manufacturer, which actually that space had some nice action this week, right? VRX had a nice pop, was a great trader this week, and that we kind of highlighted that last week. HZNP, ENDP, that whole specialty generic space, and look, it could still be in play. CPRX has got an interesting look for a potential break over $2. I will say this though, it's up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days in a row, so it might be actually at a spot where it could fail, right? If we can't take out $2, likely going to come maybe back down and test that 50-day in this 165 area one more time, see if that holds the support. So potential day trade opportunity there. Neos. So April, Cowen gave this a $20 price target. It's got a really nice looking consolidation. It's bumping right up against this long-term trend line, or longer-term trend line, I should say. It's sitting right on top of the 200-day moving average. You've got the 50, which just crossed over the 200-day. Insider buys in the $7.54 to $7.61 range. So, it's right in a spot where there's been insider buys. It's got an interesting look on the daily. If they could take out the trend line, take out the $8 holla with some conviction, you could get a nice pop out of this. Now, this has got 19.6 million shares in the float, 13% short interest. So, it's not a very big float with some real volume. You could get a pretty nice move in NEOS, and it's also in that specialty generic space. AKBA. This has had a big pop recently, got out of the upper Bollinger Band, pulled back, had a nice little trend line break on Friday on decent volume, not huge volume, but nice little trend line break. Looking for it to take out the $13 holla. Could be a day trading opportunity. 36 million shares in the float. Worth keeping an eye on for an intraday setup. EDIT, this one is reporting earnings, I believe. Editas. Let me see. Hold on a second. Yeah. Editas is reporting earnings on Monday after the close. So it's interesting because it's right on top of the 200-day moving average, just below taking out the $200 holla, or $20 holla, and below the 50-day moving average. Now, if they disappoint, they're going to break this trend line. They just did a secondary and priced it at $22.50, so it's $2.50 below where they priced their offering. This could be an interesting spot. And then there was news that I just read that came out on Saturday, today, that could give this a little boost, right? So be careful. If this thing gaps on Monday, don't go chasing the gap and then hold this into earnings, right? Because that could be problematic for you. There could be a day trade in here, 28 million shares in the float, 18% short interest. You want to scalp it on Monday, fine, but be cautious heading into the close because they have earnings after the close. Twilio, so we're big on insider buys. CEO stepped up and buys 100,000 shares at $24.43. That's stepping up to the plate, man. Pretty impressive buy. Now, bought it at $23.43, closed at $24. It's only got 51 million shares in the float, almost 32% short interest. Could we see some follow through? Sure. If it pulls back to $22.89, it could be an interesting spot to maybe take this to start building a position in it, right? I mean, my problem though is that we don't have any historical reference of how low this can go, right? It's nice to see the CEO stepping up and buying 100,000 shares. This could set up for a day trading opportunity on a break over 24 with conviction and some volume. If it stumbles and falls and we break below $23, we don't know where the bottom is. So day trading opportunity, I think it could be interesting on a pullback and hold at $23 and bounce with some conviction. Maybe it's a swing trade opportunity. And then you put your stop, at $22.50. You give yourself a little bit of cushion, right? $22.50. If it breaks below $22.50, you call it a day, you get out, because we don't know where it's going to bottom. All right, let's take a look at the next one. We already talked about FireEye, looking for a $15 break with conviction. We'll see if we get that next week. Vox does report. It has an interesting setup. Had a nice little pop this week. Broke out of a great looking formation. Got a little flag, little pennant building right now. $6 or $6.60, $6.50 is kind of acting as support. We'll see. They report Monday after the close. Just broke out of this little cup. And it's got a pretty nice look on Vox. But we probably have to wait till after earnings. 19 million shares in the float. But this could get a nice pop off of earnings after the close on Monday. Good looking setup. We'll see if this holds as support, this 660 area, and we take out 7 with conviction. Vion, right on top of the 50-day simple moving average. This is actually, let me look and see how many shares are in the float here on Vion. Okay, what do we got? Vion's got 560 million shares in the float. It's not a thin stock, pretty thick. Let's see, we got not a lot of short interest. It pays a dividend, very rich dividend, 9.4%. May have to cut that dividend. I got to learn more about this company here, this Vion, but I think they report after the close as well. No, they don't. Interesting looking setup. Clearly defined area of potential support, $4. Probably need to see some volume. I mean, it traded 1.8 million shares on Friday, actually. Thicker stock, more of a swing. I probably have to do more research on this one. It's worth keeping an eye on, but not one of my favorites. DS. All right, so I really like this one, but this one could see some more downside. But CEO bought 1 million shares between $4.15 and $4.23 in March. A director just bought 100,000 shares at $3.81 on May 10th. Right? It's got a little reversal candle here. You need to get through this trend line. It's below a sloping, downward sloping 50-day, downward sloping 200-day. Done some work on this. So if you know what Top Golf is, this is going to be a competitor, Drive Shack. The difference is they already own a bunch of golf courses. They're going to build them on their golf courses. Pretty good idea. But they're changing from a REIT to a regular corporation. Anybody that was involved in this stock because of REIT status is likely going to sell shares, which could drive this price lower. $3 would be a really attractive entry point for me for a long-term hold position or swing position. If it takes out the trend line, I would look to maybe day trade it. It's only got 61 million shares in the float, but I am looking at this one potentially for a long-term hold as well as a swing play if I can get it at the price that I'd like to get it at on a pullback to this trend line and the $3 holla. Right? I'm looking at this long-term trend line, and I'm looking at $3 has been support in the past. Support, resistance, $3. That would be an ideal entry for me on this one for a long-term hold or swing position. It's going to be a high-risk stock. They don't have any of the Drive Shacks open. They're building one in Florida, but I think it's an interesting potential opportunity. V-Ray, which had a really nice pop. It's been consolidating right at the 50-day moving average. Reports after the close on Monday. Could break it out of, or break it over this trend line with some conviction. Only 21 million shares in the float, 8% short interest. They just put $11 price target on it not too long ago. And there were well, that was at 295. Here's an example though. Significant insider buys at $2.95 over 1 million shares. Thing went to $10. Not a bad insider buy. All right, so V-Ray has an interesting setup. We'll see what earnings do. See if it can get a pop. NNA earnings are May 16th. Shipper, only 82 million shares in the float. Above here's why I like it. It's sitting right on top of the 200-day moving average, right below the 50-day, and it's coiling up. Right? It's coiling up. Decent earnings. This thing probably breaks out, and you can have a pretty nice move. Maybe get a 2 test on it. Take out 2. Maybe we come all the way up and test this trend line here. Around 250 or so. I think it's worth having on the radar. They report Tuesday, so we'll keep an eye on that one, but it has a pretty decent looking setup. JE also reports this week. They report after the close on Wednesday. Potential flat top breakout. Maybe it drifts down and pulls back to $6, and we find some support, then get earnings and take out 6. It is a little overbought, but it's in an interesting spot here. What's this price level? Hold on a second. If we could take out 630 with conviction, maybe get a nice little pop in this. Let me take a look and see what we've got for shares in Just Energy. Now, keep in mind, well, I mean, it's in the utility space, so what do we got? We've got 98 million shares in the float, so not a big float, no short interest. Worth keeping an eye on Just Energy. Could be more of a swing than it is a day trade, but we'll see how earnings affect it. JSO, does this one report? What I like about JSO is we just had the 50-day cross over the 200-day, right? Coming up into an area of price resistance, coming up into this trend line, long-term trend line. Maybe it consolidates here a bit. Maybe we drift back, pull back to 650, find that as an area of price support. Down to the 50 EMA. If it takes out the trend line with some conviction, maybe there's a day trade in there. Solars haven't exactly been hot, but I do like the look of JSO. Gur reported after the close on Friday. Looked like they reported decent numbers. Right below the 200-day moving average. We'll see how this opens up on Monday. If it takes out the 200-day, takes out this trend line, could be a play there. Wouldn't chase the open on it because it can be a pop and flopper. Look for an intraday setup. Looks like they're making money. Small float. 26 million shares in the float. Do not chase this thing. And make sure you've got some real volume there. But there could be a day trading opportunity or a higher risk swing because it has had, you know, little runs where it's had 2, 3, 4, 5 days in a row of decent movement. So it's a little bit higher risk of a swing just because of the fact that it's such a thin float. I think this is a China company, so you got to be a little careful there. But Gur, not too bad. The penny stock of the week. There's a couple actually I'm watching. MCIG, it's a pot stock. It actually looks kind of interesting. Kara had a nice little bounce on Friday. Maybe some continuation in that one, and maybe it takes some of the little penny stock pot names with it. MSIG actually started to get a little bit of action, didn't get any follow through, but this is a gold name, TGD. Just broke over this trend line. It's over the 200-day moving average. You know, maybe on a pullback to 42 cents, see if this acts as, or 40 cents, see if that acts as support. Could be an interesting spot to take it for a bounce. If gold and gold miners continue to move higher, this could be interesting, right? Just for maybe a day trade or a little bit of a higher risk swing. SB reports on Thursday after the close above the 50-day moving average. The 50 is above the 200-day. Everything is sloping up. It's another shipper, right? So the two shippers that I liked were NNA and this one, right? See if it could take out that trend line with some conviction. Maybe it moves into earnings. Could be a trader into earnings, after earnings. If they were to beat and raise, then maybe this gets some action after earnings. All right, that is my list of stocks to watch for the week. I hope there was something in here. Oh, no, wait a minute. Hold on. I lied. I lied. I got two more. SVU. So it's a grocery store chain. Pulling back to support. Looking for maybe a bounce off of this 50-day moving average. You need to see some volume here. I mean, this is more of a swing or a long-term hold proposition. It just closed the gap that it had on the daily. It had the big pop, it pulled. We just closed that gap. This could act as a support area to bounce from. You know, if this doesn't hold, then maybe it's the 50-day simple moving average that we could bounce from. It's below the 200-day, so that, you know, to take this for a swing would be riskier because of the fact that it is below the 200-day. Maybe you get a bounce off of that 50-day moving average for a day trade. It's just worth keeping an eye on. I'm not super crazy about it. LLNW. So watching this one, I was stalking it all day Friday. I was looking for it to pull back to test $3, see if that would hold as support. You know, this company's got a pretty nice looking balance sheet. It's a turnaround story. I think there's a new CEO there. Had a nice pop, nice consolidation. Tried to break out, pulling back, so a little bit of a false breakout there. But let's see if this can hold the support. This would be more of a swing or long-term hold position for me. Look, if it breaks below $3 with conviction, when it gets down to the 50-day moving average, that's where I would look to take a swing, to take a starter position for a swing. They just had earnings. Earnings were good. It's above the 200-day moving average, which is sloping up. I like this stock. I like the space. I would consider that for a swing or long-term hold, especially on a pullback to 260 or so, somewhere around the 50-day moving average. And then potentially a day trade for a bounce off the $3. So worth keeping an eye on that one. 73 million shares in the float, not a big short interest. That really is my entire list for stocks to watch for next week. Let's see what the market does. I still am pretty darn bullish. I think there's some good looking setups out there. Don't chase. Know your risk reward on every single trade. Have a plan. Build a trade plan. So I sent out, an email this week from Alpha Wolf Trading for the people that have signed up for the site of what we do. Send a screenshot of a trade plan. That's what I do. I lay out a trade plan. I know the risk reward. I have the entire plan laid out, and I do that with day trades. I do that with swing trades and long-term holds. You have to know what your plan is before just jumping in. So listen, if you like what I do, you're interested in becoming a part of the family over at Alpha Wolf Trading, email me at tim@alphawolftrading.com. If you have any questions, we're running a promotion up until the end of tomorrow night for $3.99. Just a ridiculous price, $3.99 for everything that you're given. I'm not going to promote a lifestyle. I've been doing this for a long time. Anybody that's been following me on Twitter, I've been here for a long time. To me, it's about staying in the game. It's about longevity. It's not about trying to get rich quick. So if that interests you, come check us out over at alphawolftrading.com. Have a fantastic weekend. Good luck trading next week, and I'll see you next week. Oh, to all the mothers out there, happy Mother's Day. Have a wonderful, awesome, tremendous day.